You alright guys, welcome back to another video. In this video I want to talk about a few service items that some people get wrong when maintaining their Freelander 2. We're at the back of the car and we're going to talk about the rear brakes on the Freelander 2. The reason for that is that from 2007 all the way up to the end of the 2012 they had a manual handbrake with this drum setup with brake shoes in, and then from 2013 to 2015 this got changed for an electronic parking brake. As a consequence of that, the pads and discs changed. Not by much, there's very little in it, but they changed. So if you're maintaining the car yourself, make sure 100% you get the right discs and pads, as they're incompatible with one another. Also, any of these eBay listings or websites that list rear brakes from 2007 to 2015, do not touch them until you've confirmed what car they're actually for, because what you don't want to be doing is strip the brakes out, have them all out on the floor, and then find out the new ones you've got won't fit on your car. Another thing that's mistakenly brought is glow plugs. Up until the end of 2010, which is VIN number AH999999, they should be an 11 volt glow plug with an 8mm head to them. From 2011 onwards, which is VIN number BH000001, they got changed to a 4.4 volt glow plug with a 10mm head to them. So if you're maintaining your car, make sure you purchase the correct ones. At the back of the car, and we're going to talk all things diesel filter, and I applaud you, do not buy cheap fuel filters. First of all, before I go into that, let me explain how a diesel filter works. The fuel comes from the fuel tank, goes into this port here. You'll have a pipe connected to it, then gets dropped into this filter, diesel gets filtered out, and then gets sucked to the engine via this pipe here. When the diesel is cold, a certain amount of it gets passed back from the high pressure fuel pump through to this return line. Because it's been through the high pressure fuel pump, the diesel's all nice and warm, so it gets dropped back into the fuel filter to warm up the fuel filter and warm up the diesel within it. Once it's reached its optimum temperature of whatever the engine's decided, the diesel will then get passed through back to the tank, so it won't drop into this filter anymore. So it keeps the diesel at a particular temperature which is optimum for the engine. You see, the issue with cheap nasty filters is this doesn't work. It's either missing its internals or it's stuck open. So all that happens is any warmed diesel that gets passed through here that should eventually go back to the tank once it's warmed up just keeps on getting dropped into the canister, keeps getting dropped in. Eventually your car will notice the increase in diesel temperature. It will reduce the performance to try and cool it down, and then if that doesn't work, which ultimately it won't because this pattern will keep continuing, it will go into limp mode to save itself, and at that point you've got no option but to pull over to the side of the road. A lot of people get confused by this issue, and it's just because of a cheap fuel filter. Even if you take your car to the garage, I would go to the point of either supplying the diesel filter or confirming with the garage what make is being used for your car, because if they don't know, or they say just a real cheap brand or something like that, get your own or walk away from that garage, because it's not worth it, because you will have problems. Some of the decent manufacturers out there of diesel filters, first off is obviously genuine Land Rover filters. If you can get one from Land Rover, go down that route. Yes, it will cost a few pennies more, but at least you'll have the knowledge that your car will be happy with the fuel filter. Another manufacturer is Perflex. They're the people that make the Land Rover ones, so you can save a few pennies, get a Perflex one. Cooper's, Febby Bilstein, and then there's this one which is a Bosch. I think people have found out that Bosch ones are Perflex. So any one of them companies, you'll be happy as Larry to get a fuel filter from, and they will work as they should work. Anything else out there, I wouldn't touch with a barge pole, because the chances are you will have problems. On the subject of fuel filters, if you want to know what we're using to kind of bleed air out of our fuel filter, I do think I've shown this in another video. Our video of how to change a diesel filter is actually done really well. It got randomly picked up by Google, and yeah, it keeps getting viewed. The thing is, we were using a hand bulb in there, which is perfectly fine, and it worked. It was just a bit awkward. We've now changed to this giant syringe, silver line syringe setup, in the fact of this pipe just connects to the return line. So the one that goes back to the tank, you can kind of put that on like so, and then kind of pull fuel through. So that way fuel gets pulled from the tank into this part, fills up the canister, and then I believe it heads round to the high pressure fuel pump and then gets dragged back round. So you know that once this pipe is bubble free, like it's got fluid in it that's free of bubbles, just keep pulling it through until it's free of bubbles, then you know that it's bled correctly. Even if there's a little bit of air in this section, it doesn't matter, because obviously this is the return line going back to the diesel tank, so a little bit of air here doesn't matter because it won't reach the injectors at that point. But at least you'll know that this section in and this section going to the high pressure fuel pump will be completely full of diesel with no air bubbles in it. So yeah, I thought I'd throw that in to help you out if you're looking at changing your diesel filter. Another thing to be careful of if purchasing things for your Freelander 2 is power steering pumps. This is another one. There is different variants of power steering pumps for Freelander 2. There's also the obvious, which is the petrol versions. There's different types for them as well. So just be careful if ordering a power steering pump that you get the right one for your car. Right, I just want to jump in real quick. I'm just editing up this video and I want to talk about the power steering reservoir because I forgot to take it with me on the day and I forgot to include it in the video. So I want to include it now while I'm editing this video up. Basically, I want to put this in, and I have put this in other videos, but the issue is new people obviously subscribe to the channel. They don't always go back to previous videos, so they might not see this information unless I keep putting it into videos. And that is that if you do anything with the power steering system, whether it be new rack, change of fluid, change the pump or anything like that, make sure you buy a new reservoir for your Freelander 2. The reason for this is you won't be able to see, but inside of there, which is up in here, one of these is inlet, one of this is outlet. It doesn't matter which is which for this context, but basically when the fluid goes in or out of this section, there's a mesh filter in the middle there that, like I say, you won't be able to see. What happens is that gets all gunked up and people don't realize that you can't change the filters. You can clean them out, but it's very difficult and pretty pointless for how inexpensive these bottles are. Yes, it's kind of like a waste to have to keep chopping them out. So like I say, if you do change your power steering fluid, change out the reservoir, or otherwise you'll end up putting lovely fresh fluid into the system and everything will be great. And then you'll be wondering why your power steering's whining and croaking away when you've got a new rack on it, a new pump or something like that. It's because this bottle hasn't been changed. And I have seen cars out there that have had pump changes, and you look at the bottle and you're looking and you're thinking that's still the original bottle for the factory, and that filter is going to be all blocked up with all sorts of bits of debris and stuff like that, from whether it be small flecks of the internal pipes breaking down and trying to make their way back to the bottle, that sort of thing. So yeah, make sure buy a new bottle whenever you do anything with the power steering fluid on a Freelander 2. The last item for this video is alternators. I believe there's two different variants for the diesel Freelander 2. One being without heated screen. I think that's 150 amp. And if I remember correctly, this one, which is with heated screen, I believe this is 180 amp, but I could be wrong. I'll put it on screen if I'm wrong. Yeah, make sure you get the right one, because this is another thing that you could easily splash out a lot of money for. Go to change it on your car and find out you got the wrong one, and that would be as annoying as anything. So there we have it, guys. That's just a few things you could order wrong from the internet when maintaining your Freelander 2. If this video has been of any help to you, can I ask for you to stick a like on the video? That would be much appreciated. If you want to see more videos like this, click the subscribe button. And if you want to leave a comment, feel free. I always like reading your comments, and so does Alana. But other than that, thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll say goodbye. Goodbye.